$50 an hour. That is the only reason I am sitting here smelling like old grease and lemon pledge, while the rest of the world is asleep. $50 an hour, paid in cash at the end of every shift, plus tips. When I saw the ad on Craigslist, sandwiched between a listing for a used sofa and a sketchy request for a roommate, I thought it was a scam, or maybe a drug front. Honestly, with the amount of debt I'm drowning in, I didn't care if I was washing dishes for the cartel. I just needed the money. The interview, if you can call it that, lasted 3 minutes. The owner, a man named Stan who looked like he hadn't slept since the Reagan administration, didn't ask for a resume. He didn't ask about my previous experience in customer service. He just looked at my hands, checked to see if I was shaking, and asked one question. Are you good at following instructions? I told him yes. I told him I was the most obedient worker he'd ever hire. He didn't smile. He just nodded, handed me a set of keys, and told me to show up at 2:45 in the morning. He said the night shift is quiet, mostly. He said the truckers usually just want coffee and silence. Then he said the most unsettling thing of all. He told me that if I ever felt like I was being watched, I shouldn't look out the windows. I should just look at the floor and count the tiles until the feeling passed. I laughed, thinking it was some hazing ritual for the new guy. Stan didn't laugh. So here I am, it is 2:55 a.m. The diner is called the Midway. It sits on a stretch of 2-lane blacktop about 40 miles outside of town, bordered on 3 sides by dense, suffocating pine forest. You know the kind of trees I mean, the ones that look black even during the day, the ones that seem to swallow sound. There are no streetlights out here. The only illumination comes from the flickering neon sign buzzing above the entrance and the harsh fluorescent glow inside the diner itself. It's a classic setup. Checkered black and white floors, chrome stools with red vinyl seats that are cracked from decades of use, and a jukebox in the corner that looks like it hasn't worked in 20 years. The air smells of stale coffee, bacon grease, and something else, something metallic like copper or ozone. It's quiet, too quiet. The hum of the refrigerator is the only sound, and it feels deafening. Stan was gone before I even got my apron tied. He practically ran out the door. He left the register key on the counter along with a thick, laminated sheet of paper. It looked old. The edges were peeling and there were stains on it that were too dark to be coffee. At the top, written in bold typewriter font, it said, Night Shift Protocols. I figured it was a cleaning list.
Wipe the counters, refill the sugar dispensers, mop the floors. Standard stuff. But as I started reading, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. It wasn't a cleaning list. It was a survival guide. I'm going to read it to you. I need to read it out loud, just to make sure I'm not hallucinating. If something happens to me tonight, at least there's a record. Rule number 1. The shift officially starts at 3 a.m. sharp. Do not unlock the front door before 3 a.m., no matter who you see standing outside. Even if it looks like a police officer, even if it looks like someone hurt, even if it looks like Stan. If they are knocking before 3, keep the door locked and do not make eye contact. Rule number 2. The jukebox is unplugged. It has been unplugged since 1999. If it starts playing music, do not acknowledge it. Do not hum along, do not tap your foot. Continue cleaning or serving customers as if nothing is happening. If the song is Unchained Melody, go into the walk-in freezer and close the door. Wait until the song ends before coming out. Rule number 3. There is a man who comes in around 3:15. He wears a gray trench coat and a wide-brimmed hat. We call him the Traveler. He will sit in booth 4. Do not give him a menu. He always orders the same thing: black coffee, boiling hot, and a plate of raw hamburger meat. Do not speak to him. Pour the coffee, place the meat, and walk away. When he leaves, burn the money he gives you. Do not put it in the register. Rule number 4. If the phone rings, answer it. If there is static on the other end, hang up immediately. If a voice asks for directions to the diner, tell them we are closed. Do not give them directions. If the voice sounds like your mother, do not answer it. Just put the receiver down on the counter and let it stay off the hook for 10 minutes. Rule number 5. Between 3:30 and 4 a.m., the lights in the kitchen will flicker. This is normal. However, if the lights go out completely, drop to the floor and crawl under the nearest table. Close your eyes and cover your ears. You might hear the sound of dogs barking or metal scraping against metal. Do not look, do not move. Wait until you hear the bell above the door jingle. That means it is safe to get up. Rule number 6. Never look into the mirror in the men's bathroom. We painted over it for a reason. If you see that the paint has been scratched off, lock the bathroom door from the outside and put up the out of order sign. Do not go back in there for the rest of the shift. Rule number 7. Sometime around 4 a.m., a school bus might pull into the parking lot. The windows will be dark. You won't see a driver. The door will open. No one will get off. Do not go outside to check on them.
Do not wave. Just turn your back to the windows and wipe down the counter until you hear the engine drive away. If you see a child standing at the glass staring at you, ignore them. They are not looking for help. Rule number 8. If a customer asks for the special, tell them we are out of ingredients. If they insist, tell them the chef has gone home. If they start to get angry, press the red button under the counter. It doesn't call the police. It just turns on the ventilation fans full blast. The noise usually drives them away. Rule number 9. Do not go into the basement. There is no basement in the blueprints. If you see a door behind the counter that wasn't there before, do not open it. Do not listen to the scratching coming from the other side. Rule number 10. At 5:55 a.m., go to the front door and lock it. Close the blinds. Go to the back office and sit in the chair. Do not come out until the sun is fully up and you hear Stan knocking. He has a key, but he will always knock 3 times to let you know it's him. If you hear 4 knocks, do not open the door. That's the list. I read it twice. I flipped it over, hoping to see "Just kidding" written on the back in Sharpie. Nothing. Just the yellowed surface of the lamination and a few more of those dark, rusty stains. My first instinct was to grab my jacket and leave. This has to be a joke, right? A prank on the new guy. Scare him with some creepypasta nonsense so he stays alert. Stan probably has a hidden camera set up somewhere, watching me freak out over a piece of paper. I looked around for a lens. I checked the corners of the ceiling, the eyes of the mounted deer head on the wall, the gaps in the ceiling tiles. I didn't see anything. But I did see the clock. The second hand was sweeping past the 12. The digital red numbers on the pie case clicked over. 3 a.m. A heavy metallic thunk echoed through the diner as the automatic lock on the front door disengaged. I didn't press anything. It just unlocked itself. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to drop an octave, vibrating in my chest. And then I saw it. Out in the parking lot, just beyond the reach of the neon sign's buzzing red glow. A figure was standing at the edge of the woods. It was too tall. That was the first thing my brain registered. Human proportions, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, but stretched, like someone had taken a photo of a man and dragged the corners until he was 7 feet tall and thin as a rail. I remembered rule number 1. Do not unlock the front door before 3 a.m., no matter who you see standing outside. It was 3 a.m. exactly. The door was unlocked. The figure took a step forward. Its movement was jerky, unnatural, like a stop-motion puppet missing a few frames.
It wasn't walking toward the road. It was walking toward the glass. I looked down at the laminated sheet. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely read the text. There was no rule for this. There was no rule for something standing outside at 3 a.m. The bell above the door jingled. I didn't see the door open. I was looking at the paper, but the sound was unmistakable, a soft, cheerful little ring that announced a customer. The air in the diner changed instantly. The smell of grease vanished, replaced by the smell of wet soil and rotting leaves. The hair on my arms stood up so high it hurt. "Table for 1, a voice rasped. It didn't sound like a voice coming from a throat. It sounded like 2 stones grinding together deep underground. I slowly lifted my head. I didn't want to look, but I had to. I had to know. Standing in the entryway was a man. He looked normal, bland even. He was wearing a gray trench coat and a wide-brimmed hat that cast a shadow over his face. He looked exactly like a noir detective from an old movie, except for one thing. He was vibrating. Not shaking from cold, vibrating. His edges were blurry, like a 3D movie without the glasses. "Table for 1, he repeated.
My eyes darted to the list. Rule number 3. There is a man who comes in around 3:15. He wears a gray trench coat. We call him the Traveler. I looked at the clock. 3:02 a.m. He was early. The rules didn't say what to do if he was early. The rules were specific. 3:15. This was wrong. The timeline was wrong. Sit anywhere you like, I managed to say. My voice cracked. I sounded like a child. The man didn't move. The shadow under his hat seemed to shift, and for a split second, I thought I saw teeth. Too many teeth. You have new rules, he said. He wasn't asking, he was stating a fact. He pointed a gray gloved finger at the laminated sheet on the counter. Those are the old rules, he rasped. They don't work anymore. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. What? The management has changed, the thing in the trench coat said. He took a step closer. The smell of wet earth got stronger, choking me. Burn that paper. If you follow those rules tonight, you will die. I stared at him. Then I stared at the paper. Then I looked out the window, back toward the woods where the tall, stretched thing had been. It was gone. Who are you? I whispered. The man tilted his head. The vibration stopped. He became solid, hyper-real. I am the one who eats, he said simply, and I am starving. But first, you need to write down the new rules. Do you have a pen? I reached under the counter and grabbed a cheap, big pen. I grabbed a napkin. Good, he said. Rule number 1, don't trust the static. Rule number 2,
If the kitchen door opens, hold your breath. Rule number 3. He paused, and the shadow under his hat smiled. Rule number 3. Run. Run if you hear the whistling start, he finished, the gravel in his voice smoothing out into a terrible, slippery whisper. But honestly, kid, if you hear the whistling, you're probably already part of the menu. The vibrating intensity of him spiked, a sudden, violent blur of motion that made my eyes water. And then, with a sound like a wet towel snapping against pavement, he was gone. The booth was empty. There was no puff of smoke, no dramatic fade, just an instantaneous vacating of space. The only evidence he had been there was the lingering smell of ozone and wet earth, and the faint warmth radiating from the vinyl seat where he'd been sitting. I stood there, frozen, the cheap Bic pen cracked in my grip, blue ink bleeding over my knuckles like alien blood. My heart was doing frantic somersaults against my ribs. I looked at the napkin I'd been writing on. It was a shredded, inky mess. Useless. Burn the paper, he had said. Those are the old rules. I looked over at the counter where Stan's laminated list lay. The edges were already curling, not from age, but from heat. A thin wisp of acrid gray smoke was rising from the paper. The lamination bubbled and hissed, the plastic melting like cheese under a broiler. The black typewriter font seemed to scream as it dissolved into a puddle of black sludge. I backed away, wiping the ink from my hand onto my apron. The smell of burning plastic mixed with the diner's stale grease, creating a cocktail that made me gag. Within seconds, Stan's list was nothing but a charred rectangle on the formica, but as the smoke cleared, I saw that something lay beneath it. It wasn't the char top. Where the old list had burned away, a new sheet of paper had been seared directly into the surface of the counter. It looked like parchment, thick and creamy, with edges that appeared to be stitched into the laminate with heavy black thread. The writing wasn't typed. It was handwritten in a script that was elegant, sharp, and reddish-brown. I didn't want to read it. Every instinct I had left was screaming at me to run, just like the Traveler had said. Rule number 3, run. But I needed the money. God help me, I needed the money more than I needed to feel safe. $50 an hour. I stepped closer, the fluorescent lights above me buzzing like an angry hive. The text on the parchment seemed to shimmer slightly, shifting as if the ink was still wet. The Midway Diner, revised night protocols, effective immediately upon change of management. Rule 1, disregard all previous instructions regarding time. The clock on the wall is a liar. It is a trap designed to make you feel comfortable. If you see the hands moving backward, do not panic. It simply means the shift is going to be longer than usual. If the digital clock on the pie case reads 6:66, unplug it immediately. Do not plug it back in until you smell fresh toast. Rule 2, the kitchen is no longer a safe zone. The thing that lives in the grease trap has grown. If you hear wet slopping sounds coming from behind the swinging doors, hold your breath. Do not exhale until the sounds stop. It tracks prey by the carbon dioxide they emit. If you cough, you are responsible for your own safety, and we will not cover your funeral expenses. Rule 3. We no longer serve the traveler. If the man in the gray coat returns, hide behind the counter. He is not the same man who just left. The new one has no face. If he asks for the usual, slide a bowl of salt across the counter and close your eyes. If you hear him crunching, pray. Rule 4. The phone will ring at 3:33 a.m. You must answer it. The voice on the other end will be yours. It will tell you a secret about your future. Do not believe it. It is trying to trick you into opening the back door. If the voice starts screaming, hang up and cut the phone cord. Rule 5. There is a girl in booth 6. She has been there since 1974. She is crying. Do not offer her a napkin. Do not offer her coffee. Do not ask if she is okay. If she looks at you, you will see what she sees, and your mind will not be able to handle the geometry of it. Just refill the sugar dispensers and pretend she isn't weeping black oil onto the table. Rule 6. If the lights go out, do not crawl under the tables. The tables are where they look first. Instead, stand perfectly still in the middle of the room and raise your arms above your head. Make yourself look like a tree. They do not eat trees. They only eat things that tremble. Rule 7. Payment. We do not accept cash, credit, or debit. If a customer tries to pay you with money, refuse it politely. Real currency here is different. They will leave things on the table: a tooth, a heavy iron key, a Polaroid of you sleeping in your bed, a handful of wet hair. Collect these items, put them in the safe. Do not look at the Polaroids too closely. I finished reading. The parchment felt warm to the touch, pulsing with a faint rhythmic beat, like a vein in a neck. My breath hitched. The air in the diner had gone frigid. The hum of the refrigerator had stopped. The silence was heavy, thick, and pressurized, like the air inside a submarine at crush depth. Rule 1, I thought, disregard all previous instructions regarding time. I slowly turned my head toward the clock on the wall. The second hand was ticking. Tick, tick, tick. But it wasn't moving forward. It was twitching, jerking back and forth between the 12 and the 1, stuck in a loop. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Then from the kitchen behind me came the sound. Slap, slap, slap.
It sounded like raw steaks being thrown against a tile wall. Wet, heavy, rhythmic. I froze. My lungs burned. I remembered rule number 2. If you hear wet slapping sounds coming from behind the swinging doors, hold your breath. I clamped my mouth shut. I pinched my nose. The slapping got louder, closer to the swinging metal doors. I could see the shadows of feet, too many feet, shifting under the gap at the bottom of the doorframe. The diner was suddenly very small, and the $50 an hour didn't seem like enough. I clamped my lips together so hard I tasted iron. My chest was already tight, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs that I prayed wasn't audible from the other side of those swinging metal doors. The slapping sound continued, wet, heavy impacts, like a butcher tendering meat with a flat palm. Slap, slap, and then a dragging noise, a squelch of something viscous being pulled across the quarry tile. I stared at the gap beneath the doors. The shadows there were wrong. They were shifting, elongating, and multiplying. A normal person casts a shadow with 2 feet. Whatever was standing in the kitchen seemed to have a dozen thin, spindly points of contact with the floor, moving in a chaotic, skittering dance, even though the body above them was stationary. My lungs began to burn. It started as a warmth in the center of my chest and radiated outward, turning into a desperate, clawing need for oxygen. My diaphragm spasmed. I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles white, digging my fingernails into the underside of the laminate until I felt a splinter pierce my skin. I focused on the pain. I used the sharp sting in my thumb to distract myself from the fire in my lungs. Do not exhale until the sounds stop. The slapping grew louder, more violent. The metal doors rattled in their frames, vibrating as if the air pressure inside the kitchen was fluctuating wildly. A smell wafted out, not the smell of cooking,
but the smell of a swamp in high summer, stagnant water and decay, mixed with the sharp tang of ammonia. My vision started to swim. Black spots danced in the periphery of my eyes, mixing with the harsh fluorescent glare of the dining room. I was going to pass out. If I passed out, I would breathe. If I breathed, the carbon dioxide would give me away. I need the money, I told myself. It was a mantra. $50 an hour, student loans, credit cards, rent. I need the money. Just as the darkness began to tunnel my vision, the slapping stopped. It didn't taper off. It ceased instantly, mid-echo. The shadows beneath the door froze, then dissolved, retracting back into the darkness of the kitchen like spilled ink being sucked back into a pen. I waited. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Silence returned to the diner, heavy and oppressive. The only sound was the buzzing of the neon sign outside and the blood rushing in my ears. I let out the breath in a long, shuddering hiss through my teeth. I took a gulp of the stale, greasy air, coughing quietly into my elbow. My legs felt like rubber, but I forced them to hold me up. I checked the rule list burned into the counter again. Rule 2, the kitchen is no longer a safe zone. Understood, I whispered to the empty room. My voice sounded thin, fragile. I needed to move.
Standing still felt like being a target. I grabbed a rag and a bottle of spray cleaner from under the counter, careful not to look at the red button that turned on the fans, and stepped out onto the checkered floor. The diner felt vast. The ceiling seemed higher than it should be, the shadows in the corners deeper. The rows of chrome stools reflected the light and warped funhouse distortions. I made my way down the aisle, wiping imaginary spots off the tablet tops. I kept my eyes down, focused on the work. If I looked like I belonged, maybe the diner would accept me. Maybe it would see me as part of the furniture, not as prey. As I approached the back of the room, the temperature dropped. I could see my breath misting in the air before me. Booth 6. I didn't want to look, but peripheral vision is a curse. I saw the shape of her. A young woman, maybe 20, wearing a faded denim jacket and a yellow ribbon in her hair. The fashion was wrong for today. Wide collars, polyester textures. She was sitting perfectly still, her hands folded on the table. Rule 5. There is a girl in booth 6. She has been there since 1974. I kept my eyes strictly on the sugar dispenser I was refilling at the adjacent table, but I could hear her. It wasn't a sob. It was a wet, gurgling sound like a drain backing up. Do not offer her a napkin. I moved closer to wipe down the table next to hers. Against my will, I saw the surface of her table. It was pooling with a thick, iridescent black liquid. It dripped from her face, sliding down her cheeks where tears should be, landing on the formica with heavy, viscous plops. The oil was spreading, inching toward the edge of the table, but it never dripped onto the floor. It just pooled there, defying gravity, shimmering with colors that didn't exist in the visible spectrum. I felt a magnetic pull to look at her face, a deep psychological itch in the back of my brain whispering that I needed to see. Just one look, the voice said. Just see the geometry, see the angles that shouldn't be. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood again. Just checking the sugar, I said loudly, my voice cracking. I was talking to the air, to the walls, to anything but her. Sugar looks good. Napkins are full. I backed away, keeping my body turned slightly so I wouldn't accidentally make eye contact. As I retreated to the safety of the counter, the gurgling sound behind me seemed to pitch up, turning into a low, static whine. I made it back to the register and checked the clock. The hands were no longer stuck in a loop between 12 and 1. They had jumped forward. 3:32 a.m. My stomach dropped. Rule 4. The phone will ring at 3:33 a.m. You must answer it. I looked at the phone on the wall behind the counter. It was an old rotary model, beige and stained with nicotine yellow. The cord was coiled and frayed. It looked dead. It looked like a prop. I watched the second hand on the wall clock sweep around. It moved with a jerky, mechanical unease. Tick, tick, tick. It hit the 12. 3:33 a.m. The phone rang. It wasn't a digital trill. It was a physical, jarring clamor of metal bells being struck by a hammer. It was loud enough to hurt my teeth. Ring. I stared at it. Every instinct screamed at me to let it ring, to rip the cord out of the wall. Ring. $50 an hour, I muttered. I reached out. My hand was trembling so bad I almost fumbled the receiver. I grabbed the cold plastic and lifted it to my ear. "The Midway Diner," I said. We're open." Static washed over the line. It sounded like the ocean, if the ocean was made of gravel. Then a voice cut through the white noise. "You missed a spot on table 4, the voice said. I froze. The blood drained from my face. It was my voice. Not just a similar voice, it was me. It had my cadence, my slight Midwestern drawl, the specific way I clipped my T's. It was the voice I heard in my head when I thought. "Who is this?" I asked, gripping the counter. "Don't ask stupid questions," the voice, my voice, snapped. It sounded annoyed, tired. "Listen to me closely. You're doing okay, but you're too slow. You need to be faster when the lights go out. You hesitated with the breath holding. That almost cost us." "Us?" "Me. You. The timeline doesn't matter," the voice said dismissively. "I'm calling to give you the secret. Rule 4 said I would tell you a secret, right?" "Right," I whispered. "The secret is about the back door," the voice said, dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The one in the kitchen. You locked the front door, but you forgot the delivery entrance. It's unlatched. They are gathering outside right now. You have about 45 seconds before they push it open. You need to go back there and lock it, right now." My eyes darted to the swinging kitchen doors. The memory of the slapping sounds and the too many feet shadows was still fresh. "But, Rule 2, I stammered. "The kitchen isn't safe. The thing in the grease trap." "The grease trap thing is sleeping," the voice urged. It sounded panicked now. "I'm telling you, I'm watching from the future. If you don't lock that door, the shift ends in 5 minutes, and it ends messy. Go, open the back door and lock it." I took a step toward the kitchen. It made sense. If the door was unlocked, that was a security breach. I had to fix it. My hand reached for the latch of the counter gate. "Wait," I replayed the rule in my head. "Rule 4, the voice on the other end will be yours. It will tell you a secret about your future."
Do not believe it. It is trying to trick you into opening the back door. I stopped dead. My hand hovered over the gate latch. "Why are you stopping?" the voice on the phone demanded. It was getting angry. I said, "Go. Do you want to die? Do you want to end up like the girl in booth 6? "You're lying," I said into the receiver. There was a pause. The static on the line intensified, sounding less like gravel and more like wet tearing. "I am you," the voice hissed. "I am trying to save us." "Rule 4 says do not believe it," I said, gaining a sliver of confidence. "You want me to go into the kitchen. You want me to open the door." The voice on the other end changed. The facade of humanity dropped. It didn't scream, not at first. It laughed. A low, distorted chuckle that sounded like it was coming from a throat filled with broken glass. "Smart," the thing on the phone rasped. "You're smarter than the last one." He walked right in. He tasted like copper and fear. Then the screaming started. It wasn't a human scream. It was a high-pitched electronic screech, like a modem connecting to hell. It pierced my eardrum, vibrating through the bone of my skull. I slammed the receiver down onto the cradle, but the screaming didn't stop. It continued to emit from the plastic earpiece, muffled but audible. "If the voice starts screaming, hang up and cut the phone cord." I frantically patted my pockets. I didn't have a knife. I didn't have scissors. I looked around wildly. The screaming was getting louder, rising in pitch, shattering the air. The steak knives, they were rolled in napkins in a bin under the counter. I dropped to my knees, tearing through the bin. I grabbed a serrated steak knife with a cheap wooden handle. I scrambled back up, grabbed the phone cord, and began to saw. The cord was tough. It wasn't just rubber and copper. It felt fibrous, like a tendon. A thick red liquid oozed out where the blade bit into it. I sawed harder, panic rising in my throat as the screaming from the handset turned into a rhythmic chanting in a language that hurt to listen to. With a final, sickening snap, the cord severed. The handset fell silent instantly. The cut end of the wire flailed on the counter for a second like a dying worm before going still, dripping that red fluid onto the revised rule sheet. I backed away, chest heaving, dropping the bloody steak knife. Okay, I panted. Okay, rule 4, done. I wiped the sweat from my forehead with my apron. My hands were shaking again. I looked at the clock, 3:45 a.m. Only 12 minutes had passed since the phone rang. It felt like hours. I needed to clean. Cleaning was the only thing that felt real. I grabbed the mop bucket. The wheel squeaked, a horribly loud, cheerful sound in the oppressive silence.
I focused on the sound. Squeak, squeak, squeak. I began to mop the area near the entrance, keeping my back to the kitchen and my eyes away from booth 6. The smell of the lemon cleaner was grounding. It smelled like school hallways and hospitals, safe places. Then the bell above the door jingled. I froze, gripping the mop handle like a staff. I looked at the clock. It wasn't 4 a.m. yet, no school bus. It wasn't 5:55 a.m. Stan wasn't back. I looked at the door. A man walked in. He didn't vibrate. He wasn't 10 feet tall. He wasn't wearing a trench coat. He was short, heavy-set, wearing a flannel shirt and a baseball cap that said Deer Creek Fertilizer. He looked like a guy, a regular guy you'd see at a gas station buying jerky. He wiped his boots on the mat, looking around the diner with tired eyes. He spotted me and gave a polite, weary nod. Open? He asked. His voice was normal, gravelly from smoking maybe, but human. I hesitated. I ran through the list in my head. There was no rule about regular customers. Rule 3 was about the traveler. Rule 7 was about payment. Yeah, I said, staying behind the counter. Sit anywhere, except booth 6. He grunted and lumbered over to a stool at the counter, 3 seats down from the register. He sat heavily, the vinyl groaning under his weight. He placed a set of keys on the counter. Coffee, he said, black, and a slice of cherry pie if you got it. I stared at him. He looked so normal it was terrifying. Was this a trap? Was this the traveler in a new form? Rule 3, the new one has no face. This guy had a face. He had a nose with broken capillaries, a gray stubble beard, eyes with bags under them. Coming right up, I said. I poured the coffee. My hand was steady enough. I plated a slice of cherry pie from the case. I slid them across the counter to him. He took a sip of the coffee and sighed. Needed that. Long haul tonight. The woods are active. I felt a chill. Active. He nodded, taking a forkful of pie. The fog's thick. Saw things in the road. Hard to tell what's a deer and what's not, you know? He looked up at me. His eyes were a startlingly bright blue. Too bright, like LED lights. You're new, he observed. First night, I said. Stan's a hard man to work for, the trucker said. He ate another bite of pie. But the pay is good. Just remember the payment policy. He tapped the counter with a thick finger. Rule 7, payment. We do not accept cash, credit, or debit. Real currency here is different. I know, I said. No cash. He finished his coffee in 3 large gulps. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. All right then. He reached into the pocket of his flannel shirt. Keep the change. He pulled out his hand and placed something on the counter.
It wasn't a coin. It was a heavy, rusted iron nail, bent into a hook shape, with clumps of wet, dark fur caught in the rust. Found it in my tire 10 miles back, he said. Should cover the pie. I looked at the nail. I felt a wave of nausea, but I forced myself to reach out. The metal was cold, unnaturally so. It burned my fingertips like dry ice. Thank you, I said. Take care, kid, he said, standing up. Watch the lights. He turned and walked out. The bell jingled. As the door closed, I saw him walk toward a massive semi-truck parked in the lot. But as he climbed into the cab, the truck didn't start with a diesel roar. It didn't make a sound. It simply glided away, dissolving into the fog like smoke in a wind tunnel. I picked up the iron nail. It was heavy, maybe half a pound. I walked to the safe under the counter, a heavy floor safe I hadn't noticed before. I spun the dial. It opened on the first try without a combination, and dropped the nail inside.
Inside the safe, nestled on a bed of black velvet, were other things: a dried finger bone, a silver locket that hummed, a Polaroid photo of a house that looked exactly like the one I grew up in, but burning. I slammed the safe door shut and spun the dial. "Watch the lights," he had said. As if on cue, the hum of the refrigerator died. The buzzing of the neon sign outside cut off. Total silence. Then the overhead fluorescent tubes flickered. Once. Twice. Darkness. Absolute pitch black darkness swallowed the diner. The kind of darkness that feels like a physical weight pressing against your eyes. Rule 6. If the lights go out, stand perfectly still in the middle of the room and raise your arms above your head. Make yourself look like a tree. I didn't hesitate. I vaulted over the counter, landing silently on the checkered floor. I moved to the center of the aisle, between the stools and the booths. I stood straight. I planted my feet. I raised my arms high above my head, spreading my fingers like branches. I am a tree, I thought. I am a tree. Trees have no blood. Trees have no fear. From the darkness, I heard movement. It wasn't walking. It was slithering. A dry, rasping sound, like sandpaper on tile. It was coming from the ceiling. Something dropped down onto the counter with a heavy, wet thud. I held my breath. I stretched my fingers higher, straining my muscles, locking my knees. The thing moved closer. I could feel the air displacement as it passed me. It smelled of ozone and ancient dust. I felt something cold and thin, like a wire, brush against my waist, then against my arm. It was checking me, tasting the air around me for tremors. They only eat things that tremble. My muscles screamed. The adrenaline was making my limbs shake.
I locked my jaw, forcing my body into rigidity. I am wood. I am bark. I am root. A breath, hot and smelling of raw meat, washed over my neck. Timber, a voice whispered in my ear. It sounded like the rustling of dry leaves. I didn't move. I didn't scream. I stared blindly into the dark, my arms reaching for a sun that wasn't there. The presence lingered for an eternity, the hot breath tickling the fine hairs on my neck. Then, slowly, the rasping sound retreated. It moved back toward the ceiling, scratching against the acoustic tiles. A moment later, the bell above the door jingled. The fluorescent lights flickered and buzzed back to life, bathing the diner in harsh, clinical white light. I was alone, standing in the middle of the aisle, arms raised, looking ridiculous, but I was alive. I lowered my arms, my shoulders popping painfully. I checked the clock, 4:15 a.m. I had been standing there for 20 minutes. I walked back behind the counter, my legs feeling like lead. I needed water. I reached for a glass, but stopped. On the counter, right next to the revised night protocols, was a new edition. It was a tip. The trucker hadn't left it. The thing in the dark had. It was a single perfect acorn, but it was made of human teeth, fused together in a spiral pattern. I picked it up. It was warm. $50 an hour, I whispered, dropping the tooth acorn into the safe with the rusty nail. Just make it to sunrise. I looked out the window. The school bus would be coming soon. Rule 7. But as I looked at the glass, I realized something worse. The reflection in the window wasn't moving when I moved. My reflection was standing still, staring at me with a look of absolute terror, pointing frantically at something behind me. I turned around slowly. The door to the non-existent basement, the one mentioned in Old Rule 9 that I wasn't supposed to acknowledge, was visible behind the pie case. It was open. And from the darkness of the stairwell, I heard a sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. It wasn't scratching. It wasn't growling. It was the sound of a jukebox starting up, the mechanical whir of a record being selected. The opening notes of unchained melody began to drift up from the basement. Rule 1 of the new protocols: disregard all previous instructions. But the new protocols didn't say what to do about the song. The old rules said to hide in the freezer. I looked at the freezer. I looked at the basement door. I looked at the revised list. There was no rule for this.
The music grew louder, echoing up the stairs, distorted and slow, as if the singer was underwater. Oh, my love, my darling. I grabbed the steak knife off the floor. I didn't know if weapons worked here, but I wasn't going into the freezer.
If the old rules were a trap, the freezer was a coffin. I stood my ground facing the open basement door and waited for the verse to end.
The crooning voice wavered, the pitch sliding down like a melting record until the romantic ballad sounded like a guttural, drowning moan. I need your love. The words didn't fade, they rotted, disintegrating into a wet, choking gurgle that vibrated the floorboards beneath my sneakers. The darkness in the stairwell seemed to swell, pushing against the doorframe like a physical mass of black gelatin, smelling of copper and ancient stale water. My grip on the steak knife was so tight my fingers were numb. I didn't blink. I couldn't. Then, the red light caught my eye. To my right, the digital clock on the pie case, the one I had just checked moments ago, let out a high-pitched electronic whine. The numbers flickered, dying and rebirthing in a split second. 666. The digits burned with an intensity that seared my retinas. The plastic casing around the display began to bubble, releasing thin wisps of acrid black smoke. Roll 1. If the digital clock on the pie case reads 666, unplug it immediately. Panic, sharp and electric, spiked in my chest. I had to move. The plug was behind the case, wedged between the heavy stainless steel unit and the wall, dangerously close to the open basement door. I didn't think. I just reacted. I lunged toward the pie case, the steak knife held out in front of me like a talisman. The heat radiating from the clock was intense, smelling of ozone and frying circuitry. I jammed my hand into the gap behind the machine, feeling for the thick rubber cord. My knuckles brushed against the wall. The wall was wet. It felt like warm meat. I gagged but forced my hand deeper, fingers scrambling for the plug. I found it. I yanked. The cord resisted. It felt alive, pulsing in my grip, rooting itself into the socket. Come on, I hissed through gritted teeth. With a desperate heave, I braced my foot against the cabin and pulled with everything I had. Pop. The plug tore free with a spark that snapped like a gunshot. The red 666 vanished. The electronic whine died instantly. I stumbled back, chest heaving, clutching the severed cord in my hand. Done, I panted. Rule 1, done. Then I heard it, from the kitchen. Slap. It wasn't the rhythmic beating of meat against tile this time. It was a singular, explosive impact, like a wet towel whipped against a concrete wall at the speed of sound. The swinging metal doors to the kitchen blasted open, hitting the walls on either side with a deafening clang that shook the condiment holders on the counter. My breath hitched. My lungs were burning from the exertion of the clock. I needed oxygen. I needed to gasp. Rule 2. If you hear wet sobbing sounds, hold your breath. I slammed my mouth shut. I clamped a hand over my nose. My diaphragm spasmed, begging for air.
Through the open kitchen doors, the darkness was absolute, but something was moving in it, something massive. I heard the skittering of too many legs on the quarry tile, click, 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 sound overlaid with the wet, dragging noise of a slug the size of a car. Don't exhale, don't exhale. I backed away slowly, my eyes locked on the gaping maw of the kitchen. The smell hit me first, ammonia and rot, strong enough to make my eyes water. Then from the basement door I had turned my back on, a sound emerged. It wasn't music. It wasn't the gurgling singer. It was a voice, clear, human, terrified. Help me. It was my little sister's voice. The shock was physical. It hit me in the solar plexus like a sledgehammer. My sister was at home, 3 states away. She was safe in bed. She couldn't be in the basement of a cursed diner at 4:20 in the morning. Help, it's got my leg, she screamed, the sound tearing directly through my heart. My focus shattered. The logical part of my brain that knew this was a trap was overwritten by a lifetime of instinct. Emily, I shouted. The word left my lips before I could stop it. I exhaled, a frantic, terrified expulsion of air.
Rule 2 broken. The silence that followed was louder than the screaming. The skittering in the kitchen stopped. The voice in the basement cut off instantly, replaced by a low, wet chuckle. I stood there, frozen, the word hanging in the stale air like a death sentence. I had breathed, I had spoken, I had emitted carbon dioxide in a room with a predator that tracked it. From the darkness of the kitchen, a shape began to emerge. It didn't walk out, it poured out, a mass of pale, translucent flesh that seemed to tumble over itself, rolling forward with a sickening liquid fluidity. Limbs, human arms, dog legs, things that looked like insect mandibles, poked out of the mass at random angles, clawing at the checkered floor to pull the bulk of the creature forward. It had no eyes, but in the center of the mass, a vertical slit opened. It widened, revealing rows of needle-like teeth that spun in opposite directions. It let out a sound, a high, tripping whistle that sounded like a tea kettle boiling over. Rule 3, run if you hear the whistling start. The survival instinct finally kicked in, overriding the terror paralysis. Run, I whispered. I spun on my heel, my sneakers squeaking violently on the linoleum. I sprinted down the aisle, away from the kitchen, away from the basement, towards the only other defensible position I knew. The restrooms were a trap, Rule 6 a mirror. The front door was locked. The hallway to the back office. Rule 10, go to the back office, sit in the chair. It wasn't 5:55 a.m., but I was out of options. I tore past the booths.
The air behind me displaced violently, a rush of wind and the smell of ammonia telling me the thing was gaining. It was fast, faster than a rolling pile of meat should be. As I passed booth 6, I saw her, the crying girl. She wasn't looking at the table anymore. She was looking at me. Rule 5, if she looks at you. I squeezed my eyes shut as I ran past, turning my head away. Don't look, don't look, don't look, I chanted. I felt a coldness radiate from the booth, a vacuum of emotion that sucked the warmth right out of my skin. I heard her voice, wet and thick with oil. They're hungry, she whispered. I didn't stop. I didn't open my eyes until I was past her. I skidded around the corner toward the short hallway where the office and bathrooms were located. The whistling behind me rose to a shriek, accompanied by the sound of tables being smashed aside, chrome and vinyl crunching under the weight of the thing. I slammed into the office door. It was a heavy, solid wood door with a frosted glass window. I grabbed the knob. Locked. Of course it was locked. Stan had the key, or the key was... Stan left the register key on the counter. The register key. Was it a master key? I didn't have it. I had left it by the register. I was trapped. The hallway was short, dead end. The thing was turning the corner. I could hear its bulk squeezing through the narrow passage between the booths, the wet slap drag sound accelerating. I turned around, pressing my back against the locked office door. I raised the steak knife. It felt like a toothpick. The whistling stopped. The creature hauled itself into the hallway entrance, blocking the only exit. It was huge. It filled space floor to ceiling. The translucent flesh pulsed, organs visible beneath the surface pumping black fluids. The vertical mouth opened again, drooling a thick, clear slime that sizzled when it hit the floor tiles. It didn't attack. It paused. The limbs on its body stopped flailing. They all oriented toward me. Dozens of hands, claws, and paws pointed in my direction. Then the mass shifted. A face pushed its way out of the center of the flesh, stretching the skin until it tore. It was Stan, or it looked like Stan. His face was slack, eyes rolled back into his head, jaw hanging open at an impossible angle. You, the Stan face croaked. The voice was distorted, bubbling through the slime. You breathed. I gripped the knife with both hands. I'm not part of the menu, I snarled, trying to sound braver than I felt. The Stan face smiled. The skin at the corners of his mouth ripped further. Protocol violation, it gurgled. Sanction active. The creature lunged. I didn't think. I threw myself to the floor, curling into a ball, covering my head with my arms. Rule 6. If the lights go out, they only eat things that tremble. Wait, the lights were on. But as the creature blocked the hallway, its massive bulk eclipsed the fluorescent fixtures above. Shadow fell over me. Slap. A cold, wet hand grabbed my ankle. It wasn't strong. It felt like a dead fish.
Then another hand grabbed my wrist. Then a claw hooked into my apron. I screamed and kicked, slashing blindly with the knife. The blade sank into the translucent flesh. It didn't feel like meat. It felt like popping a water balloon filled with jelly. Black ichor sprayed over my face, burning like acid. The creature recoiled, letting out a sound that was half roar, half static. The grip on my ankle loosened. I scrambled backward, crab walking, kicking at the floor. My back hit something hard, not the door. The wall next to the bathroom. The bathroom. Rule 6. Never look into the mirror. If you see that the paint has been scratched off, lock the bathroom door from the outside and put up the out of order sign. The door to the men's room was slightly ajar. I looked at the creature recovering from the knife wound. The stand face was melting back into the mass, replaced by something resembling a wolf's snout. I looked at the bathroom door. It was a gamble, a terrible suicidal gamble. If the mirror was painted over, it was safe. If the paint was scratched, I scrambled for the bathroom, throwing my shoulder against the door. I tumbled inside, slamming it shut behind me just as a heavy, wet impact shook the frame. I fumbled for the lock, a simple privacy twist lock. I engaged it. Thud. Thud. The door bowed inward, wood splintered. I spun around, panting, wiping the burning black slime from my eyes. I was in the bathroom. One stall, a urinal, a sink, and the mirror. My heart stopped. The mirror above the sink was covered in thick black paint, but right in the center, a perfect circle had been scratched away. And in that circle, I didn't see my reflection. I didn't see the tiled wall behind me. I saw a long, winding dirt road under a purple sky. I saw twisted trees with white leaves, and standing on the road, looking directly through the glass at me, was the man in the gray trench coat, the traveler. He tipped his wide-brimmed hat. "You're off the map now, kid," he mouthed. The bathroom door splintered again behind me. A claw ripped through the wood, grasping for the lock. I looked at the traveler in the mirror. I looked at the breaking door. There was no rules for this. The rules were gone. I took a breath, a real one, and I punched the glass.
It didn't shatter like glass. It didn't tinkle or crash. When my fist connected with the surface of the mirror, the sound was a wet, sickening thud, like punching a slab of raw beef frozen in liquid nitrogen. The pain was instantaneous and blinding. My knuckles didn't just graze the surface, they punched through it. My hand plunged into the space where my reflection should have been, and the temperature dropped 50 degrees in a split second. It wasn't just cold, it was a vacuum, a hungry void that sucked the air right out of the tiny bathroom. A shockwave of purple light exploded outward from the impact site, blinding me. I screamed, trying to yank my arm back, but the mirror, or the tear in reality I had just created, held onto me for a terrifying second. I felt something dry and papery brush against my bleeding knuckles on the other side. A handshake. Then the vacuum reversed. The mirror spat me out. I was thrown backward, slamming into the tiled wall opposite the sink, just as the bathroom door finally gave way. The wood exploded inward, showering the room in splinters. The frame buckled and groaned as the bulk of the creature forced its way into the small space. It was a chaotic avalanche of flesh, smelling of sulfur and the bottom of a dumpster in July. The stand face was gone, dissolved back into the rolling mass, replaced by a cluster of weeping eyes and snapping, wolf-like jaws. I was trapped. I was cornered in a space the size of a closet with a biological nightmare that defied physics. But then, the wind hit. From the jagged hole in the black-painted mirror, a gale-force wind began to howl into the bathroom. It didn't smell like the diner. It smelled of dry earth, ozone, and static electricity. White leaves, crisp and dead, blew out of the hole, swirling around the cramped room like a snowstorm. The creature shrieked.
It wasn't the tea kettle whistle this time. It was a sound of pure agony. As the wind from the traveler's world hit the translucent flesh of the monster, the slime coating it began to hiss and boil. The creature recoiled, its many limbs flailing wildly, smashing the porcelain sink, ripping the paper towel dispenser off the wall. It was burning. The air from the other side was toxic to it. Opportunity. It was the only one I was going to get. The creature thrashed to the left, trying to shield its core from the purple wind. That left a gap on the right, a gap maybe 2 feet wide between the heaving, burning bulk of the monster and the shattered doorframe. I didn't think. I scrambled on hands and knees, sliding through the slime and broken wood. A claw swipe missed my head by an inch, the wind of it ruffling my hair. I felt a stinging lash across my calf, a tentacle or a tongue, but I kicked out, my heel connected with something jelly-like, and propelled myself into the hallway.
I scrambled to my feet, slipping on the slick floor, and sprinted back toward the main dining area. The whistling had stopped, replaced by the enraged, gurgling roar of the wounded beast behind me. I didn't look back. I hit the corner and drifted, my sneakers squeaking, and burst into the main room. I skid to a halt. The diner had changed. While I was in the bathroom, the merger had accelerated. The fluorescent lights were flickering rapidly, creating a strobe effect that made movement look jerky and disconnected. But it wasn't just the lights. The floor was wrong. The black and white checker tiles were rippling like the surface of a disturbed pond. In the center of the room, near table 4, the floor had become permeable. Tall, black stalks of grass were growing through the tiles, swaying in a breeze I couldn't feel. And booth 6? I squeezed my eyes shut for a second, then opened them, forcing myself to process the geometry. The girl was gone. In her place, a tree made of black iron twisted up from the vinyl seat, punching through the drop ceiling. Its branches were weeping that same thick, iridescent oil, dripping onto the table where the girl had been crying. Rule 3, run. The roar from the hallway was getting louder. The creature had recovered. It was coming. Where? Where could I go? The front door was locked. The office was locked. The kitchen was the nest. The basement was a trap. My eyes darted around the strobe-lit nightmare. The freezer.
Old rule number 2. If the song is Unchained Melody, go into the walk-in freezer and close the door. The song had been playing from the basement. The new rules said to disregard the old ones, to hide in the kitchen, but the new rules also said the kitchen wasn't safe. The new rules were written by the management that changed. The traveler had told me to burn the old rules, but he also said run. Everything was a lie, or everything was a half-truth. But the freezer was a heavy insulated metal box with a latch that worked from the inside. It was physical, it was real. I bolted for the kitchen. I had to cross the open floor. I had to run past the iron tree in booth 6. As I passed it, a branch lashed out, slow and heavy, dripping with oil, trying to snag my shirt. I ducked, sliding under the grasp. The oil splattered on my shoulder, burning through the fabric like acid. I bit back a scream. I hit the swinging metal doors of the kitchen with my shoulder, bursting through. The smell hit me instantly, the swamp-rot stench of the nest. The darkness was absolute here, save for the strobe light flashing in from the dining room through the porthole windows. Something crunched under my foot. Bones. The floor was littered with them. Small bones. Animal bones. I saw the outline of the walk-in freezer at the far end of the prep line. It was stainless steel, massive, a beacon of industrial safety. But between me and the freezer was the grease trap.
The floor grate was gone. A hole, jagged and wet, gaped in the center of the walkway. From deep inside, I could hear the wet, rhythmic slap, slap, slap of something breathing. I didn't have time to be careful. I heard the crash of the dining room tables overturning. The big monster, the stand thing, had entered the kitchen behind me. I leaped. I jumped over the gaping grease trap hole, my sneaker catching the edge on the landing. I stumbled, my hand hitting the prep counter to steady myself. A collection of knives rattled. Clatter. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. From the hole in the floor, a long, pale appendage shot up. It looked like a human arm, but with too many elbows. It grasped blindly at the air where I had been a second ago. I scrambled forward, throwing myself at the freezer handle. It was cold, so cold it burned. I yanked the latch. The door swung open with a heavy, pressurized hiss. I dove inside and slammed it shut, and gazed from the safety release latch from the inside to lock it. Darkness, cold, silence. The thick insulation cut off the roar of the monster outside. The strobe lights were gone.
I was in a metal box, smelling of frozen meat and cardboard. I slumped against the door, sliding down until I hit the metal floor. I was shaking so hard my teeth chattered. My hand, the one that punched the mirror, was throbbing with a dull, sickening rhythm. I held it up.
In the absolute dark, I couldn't see it, but I could feel the blood dripping down my wrist. $50 an hour, I whispered into the dark. $50 an hour. I fumbled in my pocket for my phone. Dead battery? No, I had left it in my car. Rule number something. Don't bring electronics? No, that wasn't a rule. I didn't have it. I needed light. I patted my apron. The cheap Bic pen was gone. The napkin was gone. Matches. The trucker, the one who left the nail, he had been smoking, hadn't he? No, he just smelled like smoke. Wait, the pie case. I had grabbed the steak knife. I still had it? No, I dropped it when the mirror broke. I was defenseless, blind, freezing. Then I heard it, breathing. Not mine. It was coming from the back of the freezer. Slow, rowling, wet. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I held my breath. I pressed my hand over my mouth, stifling the urge to cough from the cold air. Rule 2, hold your breath. I wasn't alone in the freezer. I strained my eyes against the darkness. Slowly, faint shapes began to resolve. There was a glow coming from behind the stacks of frozen burger patties, a pale green phosphorescence. It was a pair of eyes. They were low to the ground, cat-like but human, and they were watching me. "You're loud," a voice whispered. It was a child's voice. I kept my hand over my mouth. I didn't move. Was this a trap?
Was this the child from the school bus? "It's okay," the voice whispered. "I'm hiding too. Stan told me to hide here if the music played." Stan. I lowered my hand slowly. "Who are you?" I breathed, barely audible. "I am the dishwasher," the voice said, "from the shift before yours." "The shift before mine was yesterday," I said. "Was it?" The voice giggled. It was a broken, jagged sound. "I've been here a long time. The ice keeps you fresh." The green eyes blinked. The figure moved. It crawled out from behind the boxes. It wasn't a child. It was a man, curled into a ball, his limbs atrophied and thin. He was naked, his skin blue and covered in frost. He had gnawed off his own fingers on his left hand. "You broke the mirror," the frozen man whispered. He crawled closer, his movements stiff and jerky. "I heard it. You let the wind in. That makes them angry. The management doesn't like the wind." "I had to," I said. "It was going to kill me." "It's going to kill you anyway," the man said. He reached out a stump of a hand and touched my knee. His touch was colder than the air. "But maybe we can trade." "Trade? Meat," he whispered. "They want meat. If I give them fresh meat, maybe they let me go. Maybe Stan comes back and unlocks the door." He lunged. It was a clumsy, frozen attack. He threw his weight against me, trying to pin my arms. His teeth, yellow and sharp, snapped at my throat. I reacted on instinct.
I brought my knee up, slamming it into his chest. It felt like kicking a bag of ice blocks. He grunted, winded, and rolled off me. I scrambled to my feet. The freezer was small. There was nowhere to run. He hissed and scrabbled on the floor, trying to get traction. "You don't understand. Time doesn't move in here. I've been here for years. I just want to leave." I backed up against the door. "Stay back. Give me your skin," he shrieked, launching himself at me again. I grabbed a frozen box of hamburger patties from the shelf next to me, a heavy 40-pound block of solid meat, and swung it. Thud. The corner of the box connected with his temple. The sound was terrible. The frozen man collapsed instantly, hitting the metal floor with a clatter of bones. He didn't move. The green glow in his eyes faded. I stood there, panting, gripping the box of meat. My breath came in ragged clouds. Bang! Something hit the freezer door from the outside. Bang! 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 "Open up," a voice gargled. It was the Stan thing. "Inventory check." The latch on the door jiggled. I had locked it from the inside, but the metal was groaning. The thing outside was strong. I looked at the frozen man. I looked at the box of meat. Rule 3,
He always orders the same thing, a plate of raw hamburger meat. Rule 3, if he asks for the usual, slide a bowl of salt across the counter. If you hear him crunching, pray. I didn't have salt, I had meat.
The door dented inward. A rivet popped, pinging off the back wall. I needed to get out. But the kitchen was full of monsters. The dining room was a war zone. Where was the safe zone? Rule 6, stand perfectly still. Make yourself look like a tree. The door hinge screamed. A sliver of light from the kitchen appeared as the metal peeled back. I dropped the box of meat. I grabbed the safety release handle. If I stayed, I was dead. If I ran, I was probably dead. I took a deep breath. I waited for the next impact. Bang! As the monster hit the door, I threw the latch and kicked the door open with everything I had. The heavy steel door swung out, catching the creature by surprise. It slammed into the mass of flesh, knocking it back with a wet squelch. I sprinted. I didn't look at the creature. I leaped over the grease trap again, ignoring the pale arm that snatched at my heel, and burst back into the dining room. The strobe lights had stopped. The darkness was back. But it wasn't empty. The room was full. Every booth was occupied. Shadowy figures sat at every table. They were silent. They were eating. But there was no food on the plates. They were moving forks and knives, cutting the air, lifting nothing to mouths that were just dark smudges on their faces. They all stopped. They all turned to look at me. 50 heads turned in unison. I froze. Rule 6, make yourself look like a tree. I stopped in the middle of the aisle, right next to the horrific iron tree in booth 6. I planted my feet. I raised my bleeding hand and my good hand above my head. I spread my fingers. I stood perfectly still. The stand thing burst from the kitchen, roaring. It slid onto the checkered floor, knocking over a stool. "Where is it?" the creature bellowed. Its voice shook the windows. The diners didn't move. They watched me. The creature prowled forward. It sniffed the air. Sniff, sniff. "I smell blood," it hissed. It slithered toward me. It was huge now, taking up the entire width of the aisle, a wall of translucent grease and muscle. It stopped right in front of me. I stared straight ahead. I didn't blink. My arms screamed in agony. My hand throbbed. The creature's face, a shifting mosaic of Stan, the trucker, and a wolf, leaned close to mine. Its breath smelled of the frozen man. "Are you shaking?" it whispered. I locked my knees. I bit my tongue. I am wood. I am root. Trees do not bleed. A drop of blood from my injured hand gathered in my fingertip. It grew heavy. Gravity pulled at it. "Don't fall. Please, God, don't fall." The drop fell. It hit the black and white floor with a microscopic splat. The creature smiled. Rows of spinning teeth emerged. "Timber," it rasped. It lunged. Ding. The sound was sharp, clear, and impossibly loud. It wasn't the doorbell. It wasn't the phone. It was the service bell on the counter. The little silver bell you ring for service. Ding, ding, ding. The creature froze, its jaws inches from my face. It recoiled, its head snapping toward the counter. The diners and the booths all turned their heads toward the counter. I moved my eyes. Standing behind the register was a man. He was wearing a pristine white uniform, a paper hat. He was polished, clean, and glowing with a faint golden light. He looked like Stan, but younger, healthy. His eyes were kind. He held a large, heavy revolver in one hand and the silver bell in the other. "Order up," the man said. His voice was warm, booming, and commanded absolute authority. He raised the revolver and pointed it at the monster. "Violation of health code," the man said. "Pest infestation in the dining area." Blam! The gunshot wasn't a bullet. It was a beam of pure sunlight. It hit the creature in the center of its mass. The monster didn't scream. It evaporated. It disintegrated into black dust, shrieking as the light consumed it. The force of the blast knocked me backward, off my feet, and I landed hard on the floor. The shadowy diners vanished. The iron tree sucked back into the booth. The black grass retracted into the tiles. The room was suddenly a diner. Just a diner. Dirty, smelling of grease, but normal. The man behind the counter blew the smoke from the barrel of the gun. He looked at me. "You're a mess, kid," he said. I scrambled backward, pushing myself up against the jukebox. Stan? Stan's on vacation, the man said. He placed the gun on the counter. I'm the day shift manager. You can call me Mike. I looked at the clock. The hands were spinning wildly, blurring into a gray circle. Then they snapped to a halt. 5:55 a.m. Shift's over, Mike said. He reached under the counter and pulled out a thick envelope. He tossed it onto the Formica. It landed with a heavy slap. Payday. I stared at the envelope. I stared at Mike. Is it real? I croaked. The money? Yeah, Mike said. He picked up a rag and started wiping down the counter, scrubbing away the scorch mark where the old rules had been burned. The rest of it depends on who you ask. He pointed to the front door. Sun's coming up. You got about 3 minutes before the morning rush. I suggest you take your money and get out. Unless you want to work a double? I scrambled to my feet. My legs felt like jelly. I grabbed the envelope. It was thick, heavy. I backed toward the door. I quit. Mike smiled. It was a genuine smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were old, ancient. Everyone quits, Mike said, but nobody leaves. See you tomorrow night, kid. I turned and slammed into the front door. It was unlocked. I burst out into the parking lot. The air was cold and fresh. The sky in the east was bleeding purple and orange, a real sunrise. The forest was just trees. The road was just asphalt. I ran to my car. I fumbled with my keys, my bloody hand slick on the fob. I got the door open, threw myself inside, and locked it. I started the engine. It roared to life, a beautiful, mechanical sound. I peeled out of the parking lot, tires screeching, leaving the Midway Diner behind me in the rearview mirror. I didn't stop driving until I was 20 miles away. I pulled into a rest stop, shaking, crying, laughing. I looked down at the envelope on the passenger seat. I picked it up. I tore it open. Inside was cash, stacks of it, hundreds, 50s, thousands of dollars. Enough to pay my debt, enough to move, enough to disappear. And underneath the money, there was a single folded piece of paper. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. It was a contract. Employment agreement. Employee name, position, night manager, start date immediate, term eternal. Clause 1. Upon acceptance of payment, the employee agrees to return for the next shift. Failure to appear will result in collection of collateral. Collateral listed, sister. I dropped the paper. I looked at the cash. My phone, sitting in the cup holder where I had left it, buzzed. A text message. From Emily. Hey, weirdest thing. I just had a dream you were calling me from a basement. Are you okay? Also, there's a guy in a gray coat standing on our lawn. He says he's waiting for you. I looked out the windshield at the rising sun. I put the car in gear.
I wasn't going home. I was going back. I had work to do. I spun the steering wheel hard to the left, the tires screaming in protest as the sedan fishtailed across the damp asphalt of the rest stop entrance. The smell of burning rubber mixed with the lingering scent of ozone that still clung to my clothes, a perfume of trauma that I knew deep down would never wash out. The sun was fully up now, a blinding, indifferent eye staring down from a blue sky that felt too saturated, too perfect, like a postcard printed on glossy paper. But as I merged back onto the highway, heading west toward the tread line that swallowed the horizon, the light began to change. It wasn't a sudden shift. It was a gradual, sickening desaturation. The vibrant green of the roadside grass dulled to a sickly olive. The blue sky paled, draining of color until it resembled the bruise-colored dome I had seen through the scratched mirror. I pressed the accelerator to the floor, the engine whining in a high-pitched fever pitch, watching the speedometer climb past 80, 90, 100. I needed to get back before the traveler decided my sister's front lawn was a good place for a picnic. I needed to get back before the ink on that contract dried in whatever hellish dimension it was notarized in. The text message from Emily sat heavy in my mind, a digital anchor dragging me back into the dark. He says he's waiting for you. Of course he was. The traveler wasn't just a customer. He was a scout, a recruiter.
And I had just signed on the dotted line by opening that envelope. As I passed mile marker 40,
the invisible boundary where the cell service usually died. The radio in my car turned on by itself. There was no static this time, no screaming, just a calm, rhythmic thumping, like a heartbeat amplified through a subwoofer. Thump, 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 thump. It synced with the pounding in my own chest, creating a dissonant polyrhythm that made my vision blur. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles turned white, ignoring the blood that seeped from my injured hand, soaking into the leather wrap. The woods appeared. The suffocating pine forest that bordered the Midway Diner didn't look like trees anymore. In the harsh, flat light of this wrong morning, they looked like jagged tears in the fabric of the world, black silhouettes standing guard over a prison. I saw things in the gaps between the trunks, tall, pale things that moved with the jerky cadence of stop-motion animation. They weren't hiding. They were watching the road, watching me. One of them, a creature that looked like a deer stretched on a rack, raised a hoof in a mock wave as I blurred past. I didn't wave back. I just drove. When the diner came into view, it didn't look like the war zone I had fled minutes ago. The windows were intact. The neon sign was off. The parking lot was filled with normal cars, sedans, a minivan, a pickup truck with a dog in the bed.
It looked indistinguishable from any other greasy spoon on a lonely highway. The contrast made bile rise in my throat. It was a mask, a skin suit pulled tight over a skeleton of rot and impossible geometry. I slammed the car into park right next to Mike's pristine white convertible, because of course the day shift manager drove a car that looked like it belonged in a parade. I grabbed the envelope of cash and the contract, ignoring the pain in my legs as I marched toward the entrance. The bell jingled, that cheerful, innocent sound. The diner was full, but not with shadows. It was full of people. Truckers eating eggs, a family with 2 kids arguing over pancakes, an old couple sharing a newspaper. The smell of bacon and fresh coffee was overwhelming, burying the stench of ozone and ammonia that I knew lay just beneath the floorboards. I stood in the entryway, a blood-soaked, disheveled maniac clutching a wad of cash, chests heaving. The chatter died down, heads turned, but they didn't look at me with the empty, hungry eyes of the night shift specters. They looked at me with confusion, concern. "You okay, son?" An old man at the counter asked, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. I ignored him. My eyes were locked on the figure behind the register. Mike was there. He was smiling. He looked even healthier than before, his skin glowing with that faint golden vitality that seemed to suck the light out the rest of the room.
He was wiping a spot on the counter, the exact spot where I had burned the old rules. "Table for one?" Mike asked, his voice smooth as silk. "Or are you here for the orientation?" I marched up to the counter and slammed the envelope down on the formica. The impact rattled the sugar dispensers. "Let her go," I rasped. My voice sounded wrecked, like I'd been swallowing gravel. "I'm here. I accepted the money. The contract is active. Let Emily go." Mike stopped wiping. He looked at the envelope, then up at me. His smile didn't falter, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The chatter of the customers faded into a low, buzzing hum, like a hive of angry bees. "We don't renegotiate terms during the lunch rush, kid," Mike said softly. "It's unprofessional." He leaned in closer, his golden eyes narrowing. "But since you showed initiative, and since you managed to clean up the pest problem in the kitchen without dying, we can make an adjustment. The traveler leaves your sister alone. He stays on the lawn. He doesn't knock. He doesn't whistle. He leaves," I demanded. "He waits," Mike corrected. "He waits to see if you work out. That's the collateral. You work the night shift. You keep the rules. You survive. As long as you punch in at 3 a.m. and punch out at 6 a.m., Emily sleeps safe. You miss a shift, you break a protocol, the traveler knocks." I stared at him.
I looked at the normal customers, eating their normal food, completely oblivious that they were sitting in a feeding ground. I saw the girl in booth 6, a different girl now, alive, laughing at something her boyfriend said. But I could see the faint shimmer of oil on the seat beneath her. The stain of the weeping girl was still there, echoing through the layers of reality. "I want new rules," I said, "the real ones." Mike chuckled.
He reached under the counter and pulled out a set of keys. They were heavy, iron keys on a ring made of braided bone. "There are no real rules," Mike whispered. "There are only survival strategies, and they change every night. That's why we need a manager, someone who can adapt, someone who can improvise." He dropped the keys into my bloody hand. They were ice cold. "Stan was getting slow," Mike continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "He let the mirror get scratched. He let the jukebox plug fray. He was tired. You? You're angry. You're desperate. We like that. The house likes that." He gestured to the back office. "Go get cleaned up. There's a uniform in the locker. First aid kit in the desk. You have until sundown to memorize the layout. Tonight is all you can eat night for the woods. You're going to need your strength." I looked at the keys. I looked at the contract. I looked at the door, out at the sunlight that felt like a lie. "And the money?" I asked.
"Yours to keep," Mike said, turning back to the register to ring up the old man. "Pay off your debts, buy a nice house, just make sure it's within driving distance. Commutes can be hell out here." I walked to the back office. The hallway felt longer than before. The door was unlocked this time. Inside, the office was small, windowless, and smelled of stale cigarettes and copper. There was a desk, a chair, and a computer monitor glowing with a green cursor. On the screen, a document was open. Night shift log, entry 1. I sat down. The chair creaked, a familiar sound, the only honest sound in the building. I opened the first aid kit and started wrapping my hand. The pain was grounding. It reminded me that I was still human, even if my job title wasn't anymore. I'm taping this now, while the sun is still up, while the diner is still pretending to be normal. I'm typing this because Mike was right about one thing. The rules change. If I keep them to myself, I'll forget them. The only way to survive the Midway is to document the madness. So listen to me closely. If you're reading this on a forum or hearing it narrated on some video while you try to fall asleep, wake up. This isn't a story. This is a warning. There are places in the world where the map folds over on itself. Gas stations that sell gas that burns cold. Motels where the rooms have 4 walls but no doors. And this diner. I am the night manager now.
I am the one who locks the door at 3 a.m. I am the one who feeds the thing in the grease trap so it doesn't come for you. If you are driving down a 2-lane blacktop in the middle of the night and you see a neon sign buzzing in the distance, keep driving. Ignore the smell of fresh coffee. Ignore the promise of a warm meal. If your car breaks down, stay inside. Lock the doors. If you see a man in a gray trench coat locking down the shoulder, do not offer him a ride. And if you absolutely must stop, if you are drawn in by the lights and the hunger, don't sit in booth 6. Don't play the jukebox. And for the love of God, don't ask to see the manager, because I'll be the one coming out of the back office. And I can promise you, after what I've seen, I won't be in the mood to deal with customer complaints. My name was, well, it doesn't matter what my name was. The clock on the wall just ticked backward. The sun outside the security camera feed just blinked out like a broken bulb. It's 2:59 a.m. somewhere. Shift starts now.